CIA after all the jubilation about what comes next. Certainly there are a lot of people out there who are cheering, but there are others who will see this as the United States going after this iconic figure, and Osama bin Laden is dead. So I think there will be some rallying around that, unfortunately. One thing I was going to say, George, is one of the reasons they've been meeting at the White House for the past few days, as Brian mentioned, is that they have been looking at the DNA. They wanted to make certain this was Osama bin Laden. This is why these meetings were so secret since last week. They wanted, and the president now is clearly getting more details about what exactly happened, how it happened. I think the strike that had happened was several days ago, and I believe there were 25 people killed. As you know, hundreds and hundreds of militants have been killed in these strikes in Pakistan over the years, and we know very little about those strikes. We know very little about who was killed in those strikes, but very, very good news.
And that's an excellent point, Martha, because, Brian, in several cases in the past, when top al-Qaeda operatives were believed to have been killed, it turned out not to be the case. This is when you could not afford to
could not be wrong. And in this case, after 9/11, one of bin Laden's sisters died of cancer in Boston. The FBI got a subpoena for her brain, which they took from the Boston hospital to Washington, and that's the basis for the DNA match they had in the laboratories should they get a bin Laden hit. And that's how they would do it. They would match it with DNA to get a positive ID. And generally with these strikes by the drones, the CIA has people on the ground nearby to confirm or find out actually what happened. So this sounds to me as if they have solid confirmation based on eyewitness accounts and also with the DNA.
Jake Tapper at the White House.
Well, one of the things that's remarkable about this is that, George, it's going to be such a surprise for so many of the American people. In 2004, roughly 2/3 of the American people, according to a Gallup poll, indicated that they thought it was very likely that Osama bin Laden would be captured or killed. By last fall, it was the exact reverse. 67% said they didn't think it was likely at all. So for most Americans, this news will come as a huge, obviously welcome surprise. Now, President Obama, when he was a candidate, said, we will kill bin Laden, we will crush al-Qaeda. He said that in a debate in October 2008, but since becoming president, he has not used that rhetoric in public. At the same time, the Obama administration has been rapidly and massively increasing the number of Predator drones that they have been using to attack al-Qaeda and al-Qaeda targets, extremist targets, in Pakistan through a campaign that the U.S. does not talk about openly because it's run through the intelligence agencies. And it appears as though if he was killed in Pakistan, as we're being told by Brian Ross and other sources, that is the success that has been the successful way that he's gotten bin Laden, according to sources telling us that he has been killed.
Okay, Jake Tapper, thanks very much. It's just after 11 o'clock here on the East Coast, 8 o'clock on the West Coast. We are on the air right now because we have learned that Osama bin Laden has been killed. Osama bin Laden, the founder of al-Qaeda. President Obama to speak shortly at the White House. I'm joined here by our chief investigative correspondent, Brian Ross. And Brian, for so many years, we had thought that the trail on bin Laden had gone completely cold.
That was the case. They had been looking for him high and low. There was a huge reward, $25 million plus. They could not find him. They continued to attack and go up the trail that led to him finding couriers that moved tapes, looking for large purchases of food. We believe there was a strike several days ago in northwest Pakistan. They killed 20 or 25 suspected al-Qaeda militants, and we are now told that he was probably one of those killed in that massive attack.
Had eluded capture for more than 10 years, almost a decade now, since the 9/11 attack.
It's a huge victory, not just symbolically for the U.S., going back to the attacks on the U.S. embassies in Africa, the USS Cole in Yemen, and then, of course, the 9/11 attacks, which he took credit for and was so proud to see the buildings collapse and boasting he was the only one who they were going to go down. He was the most hated man in this country.
And Martha Raddatz likely comes from a drone strike in northwest Pakistan. These drones have been launched by the CIA, actually intelligence operations for the last several years. Do we have any more details on how it might have happened?
Well, George, I can tell you, I cannot explain how momentous this is and how much joy there is in the intelligence community tonight. For the past several years, and particularly in the past several months, what they do is look at these compounds, and they go out like a circle. Everyone who's in a compound, everyone who's in an area, those drones track each of those people back to where they are, and then they track those people who know them. It is working outward from these compounds to try to figure out who might know bin Laden, how they get to him. They have never been able to track the couriers. They have never been able to figure out how the couriers get messages out. But what they do is they just expand their circle. Who goes into those circles, who comes out, who they know. It's a great diagram and just an amazing accomplishment.
An amazing accomplishment, and it will be interesting to see in the coming days whether anyone comes forward to collect that $25 million reward.
Yes, it will be. Certainly no one has before then. They've never been motivated to do that. And if they try to collect that $25 million reward, I'm sure they'll get it very quickly. But as far as I know, this is very good intelligence work, and they just kept at it.
And David Muir, you were talking earlier about the 9/11 families who never gave up this hunt either for Osama bin Laden. We're coming up now on the 10th anniversary of those 9/11 attacks. How different that anniversary will be this year now that Osama bin Laden is dead.
An incredible difference, particularly when you mark a decade that these families have waited for some sort of justice. Jake mentioned the polling as recently as this last fall that 30% of Americans thought bin Laden would never be captured or killed. And he continued to taunt the United States, as you know, with those audio tapes. There were 3 just in the last year. The most recent was in March, where he threatened to kill captive Americans if Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was killed, the mastermind, of course, of 9/11. And you've got to be thinking about these families tonight. Just this evening on World News, we profiled a teenage boy who unveiled his documentary in New York this week at the Tribeca Film Festival. He grew up down in lower Manhattan. He was a kindergartner when those towers were falling that morning. He saw it happen. He saw the people jumping from the offices. And there was a firefighter running to the scene who said to him as a little boy, grow up to be a good man. He said it never left him, and that's what drove the documentary. And I think that's the sort of sentiment you'll hear over and over again as we continue to report out this story in the next 24 hours, that this was a night, this was a headline that American families, the relatives of those 2,974 victims, have been waiting for now nearly a decade.
And Brian Ross, there not only had the United States lost the trail of bin Laden at various times, there had also been reports that he had died perhaps of kidney failure.
Right. There were concerns about his health. Supposedly he had been poisoned by Saudi intelligence who felt he'd gone off the wheels. They essentially set him up. Don't forget, he originally was set up by Saudi and the U.S. to help fight the Russians in Afghanistan, and then went on to turn on the U.S. And there were concerns that he had problems with his health, reported kidney dialysis, and analyzing the videos as they came out over the last 10 years, you can see him graying. He was 54 years old, just turned 54 in March, and appeared to be in continued good health, even for the sparse conditions under which he was living.
And Jake Tapper, as you point out, President Obama had made it a central plank of his campaign that he was not going to let Osama bin Laden out of his sights, that he was going to be even tougher and even more determined to get bin Laden than President Bush was. He was fierce in that debate in the 2008 campaign, and the White House will be careful not to put this in a political context tonight. What a political boost this will be for President Obama.
Yeah, so he said that the war in Iraq was an example of the U.S., the Bush administration, taking their eyes off the ball when Afghanistan and al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden, was the real target. And obviously, in recent years, since he became president, there's been a surge of troops. There's now more than 100,000 U.S. troops in Afghanistan. And as we discussed earlier in the program, in this special, he has increased significantly the number of unmanned Predator drones in Pakistan. And of course, that is where al-Qaeda is said to have been hiding, in Pakistan. When we interviewed CIA Director Leon Panetta last year on This Week, he said there were less than 100 members of al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, that most of them were across the border. Of course, those borders are very porous, so there were times, of course, that he was thought to have been, Osama bin Laden was thought to have been in Afghanistan as he's allegedly traveled, but military intelligence, CIA officers for years were unable to find out where he was, if he was in Afghanistan. It seems that this Predator drone campaign really was successful. Of course, we'll have to find out more details as they come forward.
Okay, Jake, thanks. We're now joined by Andy Card. He was Chief of Staff for President Bush in the White House. Mr. Card, your reaction tonight?
Well, this is a terrific day for America and, quite frankly, for the whole world that's